Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some Meat Eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls, and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.
Hey, this is Tyler Jones, and you're listening to the Element Podcast. What's happening on my woods, people? It's kind of a dreary day today where we're at, and we are in the car. Luckily, we got a thermostatic type temperature going here, control at least, and I'm feeling good. I'm a little tired, but like overall, my spirits are okay.
Yeah.
I'm excited at like what the future may hold. I'm a little bit dismayed at the past few days. KC, how are those Reese's, dude?
All four of them were terrific. They were fresh. They were the right temperature to where the chocolate was still firm yet supple.
Oh.
And then the peanut butter was moist, not, it gets a little bit crusty, like just a touch. Thinking about that.
In a Reese's?
Yeah. I like the peanut butter. It's kind of crumbly sometimes.
Those are those ones that you're eating from Halloween in like July.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, those ones. But this one, I mean, dude, this got pressed out in Hershey, Pennsylvania yesterday. Fresh delivery. Yeah. Come on.
Well, I guess one thing I would say real quick is that if you're listening to this on the day that it releases, we are doing, which will be Friday, right? Today's Friday.
Yeah, today's Friday. November 30th.
Yeah. We will be doing a live Q&A event about how the season has gone for us. Any kind of tactical questions you might have for us, any personal questions. I mean, you can ask anything you want.
Public land stuff.
Public land stuff's cool. How our hunt's been going the last few days or last month, or KC, why have all your bucks disappeared in Texas off your property?
Because they dying everywhere. Honestly, like, if you want to talk about how to make the messiest truck that you could humanly possibly do, we are the guys to talk to.
We can answer that question.
We can answer that question for you.
So, if it's close to 6:30 p.m. Central Time right now when you're listening, then you need to just go over there, put pause on this, and go over there and ask us a question.
Yeah.
If it is prior to that, you can send us a DM on Instagram or Facebook or through the website and let us know a question you might have, or you can comment in the live video comment section.
Yep.
So, anyway, go check that out if it's close to 6:30. Otherwise, let's move on. Man, it has been a Wild West week, it feels like.
Oh, my goodness, it has. I kind of feel like it went by really fast.
I do, too.
Yeah.
Is that because it was like one less day than the last trip or something?
Maybe. Or it might have been like the kind of deal where... So I'll tell y'all kind of what happened is we were supposed to leave on Sunday, and I got really, really, really sick, and we couldn't leave, so we left on Monday. And
you had CWD or
I did.
DHD?
Yeah, a combination of
Same
both.
thing.
Yeah. And it kind of just like messed the schedule up in my mind or something, you know. And then the whole trip I've been trying to get over this little sickness that I have. And we spent the first day and a half all on the same property. And I think that's really what made it go faster for me specifically, was the fact that 3 hunts were spent like pretty much in the same spot. And then after that, like, we felt like, or at least I felt like, I got to hunting when I started bouncing around and going different places and trying new stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you felt the same about that.
I don't know that that's how I feel about the old speed of the trip, the mental speed. Because, like, even when we were bouncing around the last couple of days, and you know, my dad and Drew have been in camp.
He'll appreciate that mention. By the way.
He will. he needs some notoriety, right?
He does.
Anyway, even like the lunchtime period, like, we haven't really had that when it's just you and me kind of chilling, you know, and doing our thing. So, like, our lunchtime, especially when in the Rut-Cation part of our, you know, out-of-state trip, we were like rattling. It seemed like we hardly even stopped for lunch. We'd grab something real quick, and then we'd take off and go rattle, or, you know, we're doing something. And, you know, when they were there, we'd kind of go back, see and visit with them a little bit. And it was also pretty warm weather a few days. And, but, like, even those lunchtime periods were like, I felt like flying by, like, so short.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. And yesterday, obviously, for reasons that we will tell you in a little bit, was like a very, very short lunch period or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, man, it's been crazy. I don't know. I don't even know, like, where to begin this podcast, really. I don't know.
Start from the beginning, man.
I mean, do we tell the story of what
I think we use a little, like, illusion. Like, allude to some things.
We're going to use illusion or illusion? We're going to illusionally tell them some illusions.
I think it's with an E.
An E.
So
I was thinking it was with an A.
You can.
But it could be with an I, too.
It could be with an I.
That's what I'm saying.
Can it be with a U? Because that would be almost all the vowels, right?
Illusion.
Yeah. We're going to allude to a few things.
Okay,
right?
so you guys, it seems like you got an idea with one of these spellings of illusion.
Okay, so the last time we were up here, we got some permission places. Yeah. And we were pretty hyped about them for good reason. They're really good properties.
And you were batting like 450 at the time.
Oh, my goodness. Like, it was going real well for my phone calls. And we decided that, like, that was going to be one of the places that we really spent a decent amount of time. Because the last morning we were here on our Rut-Cation hunt, we saw, like, a 150 plus on this place and a lot of deer activity. Fast forward to now, the whole trip, like, on the way, we're just hyped about going to that spot. Like, can't wait to get back there. Can't wait to get back there. And that's the place we spent the first 3 hunts. The first evening we got there actually was a really good hunt for me. I feel like you had a harder hunt
on the first
evening, right? Because where I sit up, we're looking across a stubble field at each other, about 300 yards.
Yeah.
And
through the binos and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Having to pee opposite directions and all kinds of stuff. Got to watch out. But
never know in case he's filming you across
that's right.
the field.
But I'm set up on a creek between a CRP field and a stubble field. Tyler is set up on a tree line of a woodlot next to the stubble field. Both are decent places where we'd seen deer before. That night ended up being a lot better for me because I saw a lot of deer coming out of that CRP.
You got straight up surrounded.
Straight up surrounded. I got donadoed is what I
you did.
Coined the term that evening.
I think, you were on video saying that. That was a cool term.
I think I might use it in the future, man.
Yeah.
If y'all want to use that, just get in touch with me and I'll
release the trademark rights.
I'll give you some some rights to use that. If not, you will be receiving a cease and desist letter. Just kidding. Okay, so, but I was in this tree, like 8 foot off the ground, and there does, like 13 does, like on all sides of me, halfway smelling me, not understanding what's happening, and stressing me out for a good solid hour. And finally, they spook a little bit, just like kind of bump, which was good, but it took way too long. And then there was a buck somewhere in that. right? Didn't you see a buck? Or I saw a buck go into you?
I saw a buck that first evening.
That's right. It's
right at dark.
A buck cut from the other end of your woodlot over kind of to where I was, but it was getting too late.
He was feeding when I first saw him, and he was very chill, and I was like, I could tell right off, that's a buck, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times when you see a deer by itself this time of year, you can kind of assume it's a buck.
Yeah.
But he's chilling.
Yeah, and then I grunted at it and didn't care because there was probably 20 does down there at the corner of that property, and that's where he was going. And then,
do you see my hand right now? All these little dots all over it. That's from these eventually have worked more and more onto my hand, but some of these are from rattling at that buck.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He wouldn't look, and I just got I was hitting him as hard as I could.
Yeah.
And he was not listening.
And that's something that kind of played out throughout this trip. I don't know if we had a single deer respond positively to rattling, except maybe one, which we'll talk about in a second. Then after that buck left my vision, I looked to my right and I saw a buck cutting across the CRP field. And it was at that moment it got too dark, and Tyler and I are texting, hey, do you want to come back here in the morning? And we pretty much both decided, yeah, this is worth it. Like, we saw a decent amount of deer tonight. Let's come back.
You saw 15 deer?
Well,
I think that's what you said?
That's 15 deer, like, in that general area, but I was seeing deer way off,
right,
too,
right,
you know,
right.
and you were seeing some deer way off as well, I think, a couple bucks, right?
Yeah.
So we decided to come back the next morning, leave the stands in the tree, which I love. Can I just tell you, I love being able to walk up to a stand in the mornings. Like, the morning hang and hunt life is a drag.
It is.
It is a drag, but it does pay off sometimes.
It does, but I'll tell you this. Last year when we killed Nameless, we did not hang stands that morning.
We did not. No, it's
this
a lot
morning,
quieter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, this morning, we're literally still setting up, and I'm like, there's a buck. 20 yards.
No
you know?
kidding. But
anyway.
Then that first morning of the trip, right, we head back in, and we have very different hunts than the night before. I don't have any close encounters with any deer. I just see deer in the distance. But I do see one very important deer. A deer that enters your woodlot.
Named.
Named. What is he named?
I don't know. Kickers or stickers? What did you say earlier?
Kickers.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have to explain it, and we're not getting too creative with this guy because we have a very brief history with him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but
Casey.
It's a good way to, like, you can't just say the 8, right?
Right, because there's a lot of 8 points out there.
Or something, yeah.
So I had set up this spot the afternoon before, and it was, I don't know if this is a case of me being a touch lazy or not, but we were going to hunt the same, pretty much same wind and same spots as we did the night before, the next morning. So the way my setup is I was set up so I could see a lot of country to just kind of like call, I guess, some, and also, I don't know, it's just fun to watch you like do what you do in the stand, I guess, you know.
Yeah, and we talked about like being able to video each other across the field would be pretty sweet.
Yeah. And so I had set up pretty close to the north side of this particular woodlot. And I mean, I was pretty much on it. You know, I was on the tree on the north edge of it, thinking that deer would come. I had a feeling they'd come from my west and come down the tree line there, check some of the scrapes that we've seen, and come right in front of me. And I had maybe kind of a little shot to the back, but man, there was so much brush to the back, and I was cautious, or you know, I thought about it for sure, but I guess I wasn't cautious enough about some of that brush. But I should have known that if a buck was coming through the woodlot, that he wouldn't be on the north side on a north wind. And my assumption, or my lack of assumption, it hurt me in the end. The buck comes out in the middle of the woodlot, down a ways from me, kind of in an opening, and I see him. He's probably 75 yards. He's working to me, but not exactly. He comes in through the middle of this, and this woodlot's a real thin strip. I mean, I can't shoot across it, but it's probably like 80 yards wide, maybe 90 yards wide. And he comes through basically the dead middle of it. I'm kind of on the lane, just about on the north side. And he probably ends up about 35 yards from me. and he's going to work to where he's downwind of me. My wind is like a north-northwest. He's coming from the west. And so he's going to hit my downwind side. So I'm like, I kind of need to do something, but I'm going to see if he gets to an opening here at like 30, 35 yards. He was on that trajectory. Like kind of milled around and flattened out. And next thing I know, he's getting close to my downwind stuff. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to anticipate a little bit here and just try to hopefully, what you kind of want to do, I feel like, in a situation like this is you don't want him to get like close to the edge of your wind, because he's just going to, as soon as he starts cutting to you and slightly downwind, he's going to hit your wind, right? Mm-hmm. You want to give it a buffer so that, like, most bucks are not going to go at a perpendicular trajectory to you and your wind. Uh-huh. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, they're going to come at you, but also downwind a little bit.
Close distance and try to get downwind.
Exactly. So I'm trying to give that, like, I'm trying to give a little bit of a buffer there, so that, like, by the time he gets to my wind, he's at 25 yards in an open lane or whatever, you know? So I hit him with, I think I hit him with a mouth grunt, maybe. I can't remember what I did first. Anyway, there was a mixture of, like, mouth grunt, and I just barely took my rattling horns. It was super still. It was very tough to do, and I'm trying to film this whole thing. I ended up getting zero footage of this buck. The only footage of him, my lens is focused at like 4 feet, and so like he's at 60 yards at this point. So you can imagine what that looks like. Anyway, I get him. I hit him with just like the lightest little tine tickling thing. I've heard. I've been blessed to hear a few buck fights, and I've heard one between some little like spikes, little 1.5s.
Dinkers.
And anyway, I tried to mimic that, and he immediately looks up and starts coming to me, and I'm like, this is about to happen. There's a tree 15 yards maybe from the tree that I'm in that you and I set up in last time.
Oh, that one.
If I had set up in that tree, I would smoke this deer, okay? Well, he comes to like 25 and just looks around, and he's looking through like this grass and tumbleweed stuff, and he realizes that there's not a deer there where that rattle came from. He thinks he can see it all, I guess. And so he just kind of turns around and mills off, where I kind of proceed to like overcall and spook him out of the country.
Maybe.
I think. Right? Yeah, we're not sure. The bad thing is I didn't get footage. The good thing is we ended up getting trail camera video of this guy.
So he's not spooked out of the country.
So he's not spooked out of the country.
But
he seemed like it at the time.
Yes, he did. Yeah,
I was very disappointed.
Yeah.
I was basically clipped on, ready to go. I had the camera focused at 3 yards or 5 yards, because there's a trail that goes right next to my tree that he was going to hit, and just never did.
Man, that's crazy. And when you texted me that all happened, I could believe it, but I just could not believe it at the same, because like I knew that deer, like when I saw him go in the woods, I was like, Tyler's gonna see that buck.
Yeah, like
he's cruising. He ain't like gonna go in there in bed, and you did, and it just almost happened.
Oh, yeah.
Like so close, man,
so close. But, and I don't know. I knew he was a good buck.
Yeah.
I didn't know how big, because he's kind of narrow, and I didn't actually talk about this any more than I made the big deal about it at first, but my tether rope kept hanging up on. I had trouble getting my bow in my hand, because my bow hanger was a step, like a screw-in step. Well, to get in this tree, I couldn't get a stick around the base of it.
The rope wasn't
long enough, so I had to use a screw in, which there goes my bow hanger. So my bow is hanging on some weird limb like behind me. I had to do like a 360 to get my bow and then turn back around while this deer's at like 70 yards. So this included with my tether like hanging up in my camera arm, and then trying to get the camera all situated. Oh, it was a hassle and a debacle, and I ended up not able to get it done, and couldn't ever really get a good look at the buck either.
Yeah.
And so, but I could tell you that when he looked at me at like 25 yards, or not at me, but in my direction, I could tell he was heavy, decent time length, and he had 2 matching kickers on his what I assumed were G2s that came out the sides.
And when Tyler told me and the other 2 guys in camp this, we were like, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Kind of like a...
Because I was like, I think he had 2 stickers is what I said. And I just like, because I don't want to be the guy that's like over talking anything, you know. I want to make sure that like if I say something that it's a for sure deal, you know. And he ended up, he did have 2 kickers.
He did. He does. He currently does.
He's a stud, man.
But so how are you going to fix that deal with the tether rope? Like that when we talked about this stuff before we started podcasting, like we really wanted to emphasize learning whenever we go and do stuff like this, right? Like learning how to, because a thing we've been talking about is how many close calls we've had, right?
Yes.
If we can't do everything about the close calls, right? Sometimes they're just going to happen. And it's good that you're having close calls. That means you're in the deer. Mm-hmm. But there's got to be some little things that we can tweak that turn some of these close calls into shots, right? Into dead deer. And that's what we're really trying to make happen. So in this particular moment, how can you help me and everyone else listening to understand how to rig their harness to the tree better if they're filming or, you know, not getting in the way of bow or whatever?
Right. Well, okay, so there's a couple things that I would probably do. And just real quick to just kind of extend or elaborate on what you were just kind of saying, you know, like I've heard this before and I feel like it's very true, but like when a football team gets a new coach, like they have to, there's usually not the first year that coach is there usually isn't the year that it happens. They go to the championship game or whatever. Right. So like the thing is a good coach teaches his players how to win close games.
Yeah.
That's where it starts. You know, you can't just like become Alabama all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Like what you'll do in that first year or that second year is you'll lose a lot of close games. Yeah. Because your guys have just not learned how to win. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that maybe that what we're doing, you know, how we're attempting to make things work right now, how we're on new properties and these different things, like all this combined is such a new thing and I feel like we're doing a good enough job you know, using our heads and trying to get ourselves in the game, and that's why we're having these close calls. But I feel like that we're in that stage where we're losing the games just barely every time. You know what I mean? Yeah. And to where, and it's obviously different than football too.
Well, you're not going to win as many games in hunting because you only as soon as you win one game, you're done playing.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
For most people, so it's going to be a different scenario, and you know. I would love to go back and have a 10-win season as a high school football player, but I don't want to win every game hunting. Right. You know what I mean? Because then you're not hunting anymore. It's just not as much fun.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's part of it for sure. So it's different.
The analogy works.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, the tether rope. I have 2 carabiners, big carabiners on there, and
can I help explain something here?
Yep.
So your harness is something you put on, right? And then it has a rope out the back of it.
Yeah.
And then are you calling your tether that rope, or is your tether the other thing?
The rope, this an extra rope.
Okay, so it's the thing your harness hooks to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, you know, you've got like a 2-foot extending part of your harness that you hook this tether rope to.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I've got a carabiner on each end. Mm-hmm. So what I usually will do is I'll have it clipped to my like waist holes or whatever on the side of my waist when I'm going up. Is
that the official term for this?
Yes, that's definitely not official.
Okay, let's make sure.
So anyway, that'll help me like if I'm hanging a stick or a stand or whatever.
The lineman belt style.
It's a lineman belt style thing. And so when I get up into the tree, the first thing I try to do is if I have all my like base layer type stuff on, if I don't, I guess then I put on like, you know, for instance, my heavyweight merino or whatever. You know, like I'll put that on real quick, try to do it very carefully, and then I put my harness back on overall, like my base layer type stuff, before I put on jackets. And then, one tip is I always, for some reason, I put my jackets on right arm first. You got to make sure that the where you tether to on your harness is you basically always want to make sure that's like slung over your shoulder, your opposite shoulder that you're putting your first arm into. That's how I do it. And I put one sleeve in, and then you pull the jacket up from underneath and put it on. That way you're always, just be conscious, because you'll have to take a jacket off if you don't sometimes. But just make sure that your tether's sticking out, basically the neck or whatever. So I put one tag or one end on, with clipping on to the vest, and then clip the other end. I throw it around a tree or a limb and clip it onto itself, the rope, with the other carabiner.
Kind of tight, cinch it down.
And I cinch it down, and that's not super effective. If it's a limb, you want to make sure it's not a dead limb. Mm-hmm. And if it is a limb, you want to make sure it holds you, and you will usually have a much better tether experience, I feel like.
Yeah.
But if you have to go around the tree, and this is the issue, is that if I had like one stand tree or two stand trees, I would just adjust my tether length and everything else how I need it in that stand. But since we're hanging in different trees almost every hunt, it seems like, you're just going to have to deal with it sometimes. Mm-hmm. But if I had like some kind of so you have like a Prusik knot or whatever, I guess is what it's called?
I don't know the fancy word for it. It's like a logger's knot, how do you explain how it works? It looks like a noose, and you pull on it like away from the knot, and it's going to hold tight to the rope. Yeah. And if you put your hand on the knot and slide it up and down the rope, it works easily. Right. And it works really good in the scenario you're talking about, because I can cinch it down to the tree and like it's not going anywhere. Yeah. And it's adjustable in length, right? So like today, for instance, where we hunted, Tyler and I were on the same tree, like really about the same height, and my rope kind of needed to be a little bit lower, so I could just adjust that Prusik knot, I don't remember how you say it, out, give myself a touch more slack to where my tether is actually kind of hitting the tree about the same place as the seat of my stand. Mm-hmm. And that's actually where I like it a lot of times. I like my tether down low. I know you're probably going to fall further.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I can't stand having a tight tether.
No.
I cannot stand it.
I mean, you're not going to have a tight one. Like, if you hunt to where you might sit or stand, and, if you're hunting a decent amount of time, you're going to want to do both of those things, because sitting all day or standing all day is not fun. Right. So you're going to have, like, a moment when it's pretty loose. Yeah. It's just the way it kind of works. So I like to put it down there low. That way it's out of the way of everything. Yeah. You don't have any issues with your bow, any issues with the camera arm. None of that. Also, we're hunting together, so like if you fall a long ways and can't get back under the tree, like most of the time I'd be there to help you or whatever. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, I did test my harness on this trip. You did, but you were fun lineman style when you did that, and it kind of worked.
Yeah, it did. I was we were climbing up a dead tree, which is maybe not the smartest thing, and it was kind of small. And my sticks, I need to do a review on them on YouTube. There's some great things about them, and there's some things that I really don't like. But they tend to be a little spongy and not stick very good. When you put your stick on the tree this morning, I was like, I love these sticks.
Dude, I thought that too.
It was so solid.
I've dogged those Hawk Razor Maxes a little bit because they're kind of heavy and a little bit cumbersome. But, man, you can, like, climb up a tree upside down on those things. Like they stick to the dang tree. And you know what else I like about them is that those feet stick out. Yeah. As opposed to right up against the trunk of the tree. Yeah, they're not like perpendicular. You're not like tiptoeing. Like you can get like the arch of your foot on that thing. Right. And it's pretty solid. But it's nice. Anyway,
one of my sticks gave a little bit as I'm like trying to put, and I was only like 8 foot up, but I had my lineman's belt, around the tree or whatever. And so I start going.
It was slow-mo fall,
It was slow-mo.
Oh, my gosh.
And so, like, I just start going, and I basically, like, the tree's leaning a little bit, so I just did this, like, spin around the tree, and I'm just sitting there looking like Mowgli hanging onto the tree, or whatever. And it's just, I was not very high up, and I can't remember, I think I had to hand you the stand back that you were handing me when I slid. But yeah.
We were
anyway.
also, okay, so when that happened, that was, I don't remember what day it was, but we're back on that same place again, and we're trying to get really, really sneaky. Oh, it's that evening from the morning. Oh, so we're back on track on our story.
Are we?
Yeah.
How about that?
It's the evening after Tyler had that encounter with that big buck. We're going to try to, like, sneak in and, like, bump and dump style hunt him, and we had a little pattern of him leaving the woodlot in the evenings from this corner. So we snuck in really quietly, took a different access route because of wind and visual seclusion, and we're trying to be as sneaky as possible climbing this tree because we know there's deer bedded within 100 yards. And Tyler's falling out of the tree.
Yeah, you had seen does go in there, and I was sitting on the other end, so I know they didn't come out, you know?
They're in there somewhere.
And so they were bedded in the stick stuff, you know? And I just, like, raged this tree, and the bark was like, which, speaking of the bark, one of the funnier moments in the stand, what were you? Oh, you were trying to screw in.
I was trying to screw my bow hanger, which is legal where we're at.
Yeah, it is on private or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, you start screwing that thing in, and it's like the bark is off of the tree, but it's still like it's on the tree, but the inside, whatever they call, like between the bark and the like the inside, I guess the actual wood of the tree had shrunk, and the bark was still the same size. So there was like a gap, and it was loose.
There's a big old pig out there. Is that a big pig?
It's a dog, I think.
Oh, that's a
It looked
woolly
like a
dog.
pig at first. It is a woolly dog.
That's the woolliest dog I've ever seen. Yeah, anyways, so the xylem and the phloem, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And then so you screw in, and you can't get it to bite into the wood or whatever, so you start, like, peeling the bark.
I, like, come off with a birch bark canoe off the side of this tree. And I'm like, and then I'm holding this thing like it's
it was like dumping in your bag, remember?
Oh, that's right. All the stinking little bug shavings were like dumping in my bag. I was like, well, that's cool.
And he goes, no, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. You had to be there, but it was funny.
And then I'm sitting here holding this thing like it's, I don't know, a baby horse, like it's big, and I'm like, what am I going to do with this? I can't drop it because it's going to be loud when it hits the ground and scary for everything. So, like, I just kind of, like, stuck it up in this other little tree right next to it. So Tyler's like, that's going to fall when the buck comes in
The
later.
worst time. I always think of that. Like, if I break off a limb or something, I'm like, dadgummit, I don't know what to do with this because it's going to fall as soon as he comes in.
Yep, yeah, it can happen for sure.
It can happen, and we will talk about what
unplanned,
yes, unforeseen,
inconvenient things that can happen.
Yeah. Anyway,
but that evening was kind of lackluster. Right?
Yeah. Did we see?
We just saw does at a distance, and that's it. And
did we not see the buck?
No, we didn't see the buck that night. We did, however, have deer get up from a bed 60 yards from us.
Yeah.
So
Two
our
different
plan worked.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plan worked. Those does were in there. We didn't spook them.
And they went a way that we didn't expect them to go.
They went away from us. So here's like one of those unanswered questions that you, like, there's no way to ever know. But, like, did they hear us enough to be deterred from exiting that direction? Or was it just luck of the draw? They went that way.
Right.
Or, like, they heard us, but they didn't spook. But they're like, I don't know what's going on over there, so I'm going to go over here. Another thing about this place is that the deer, although I don't think there's pressure per se, too bad, but they are very skittish because there is umpteen billion coyotes at this place.
Man.
We saw coyotes, like multiple coyotes, every sit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you shot at one early
one morning. I shot at one, just dumb. I was just
Shanghai.
It's one of those like November 27th or whatever day it was, and I haven't let an arrow go yet since in literally a year at anything.
You said that your tactic on coyotes is different than on most things, right?
Yeah, it's called lack of focus.
It's like flinging arrows kind of thing.
Yeah, I just don't. Like, remember that one I shot last year, like 10 yards, and I didn't hit it very good. You know, like I just don't focus, and I probably should, but I know I should, but I just like
trying to get it done.
Go away. You know.
How many? Look at that calf with that piece of paper in his mouth.
I saw that.
The other calves are chasing him. What is going on?
It's a weird place.
This is a weird spot right here. Anyways, I got distracted.
That's all right. So that evening, we didn't see a whole lot.
Yeah.
And
for some reason, we decided to go back again in the morning. I think it's because we had a morning pattern from the day before, and we were unsure if that buck was spooked that bad. Yeah. And ends up we go back in the morning. Another morning where we get to go in and just climb in the tree. Like, it was so good.
Yeah.
I told you on the way in, I was like, dude, I'm just going to sit here and enjoy this hunt. And
I feel like one thing that to be noted is that we tried to keep conscious of this, but it can slip. You can slip into being a little bit lazy with that. You know what I mean?
We were that morning.
And it's possible that happened, but, I always try to pose the question when we're talking about where to go the next morning. I'm like, but are we just being lazy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think if you can keep that in the back of your mind, most of the time you won't be, and there will be a few times where you are. And
I think on that particular morning, it was a mixture of two things. It was
supposed to be a good win for one.
Supposed to be. And then two, we were being maybe a touch lazy. And then there's a deer right there. And then three, we were mystified by the permission property.
Yeah.
I think that was a big thing for us. I think that was kind of almost a motif for the first couple days of this hunt, was that, man, we were just so hyped about getting this permission, and this is a great place, and we're going to try to get more permissions. But I think we were just like so hyped up on it that we thought we had to go back because it was such a great option.
Yeah,
right?
We didn't have to mess with anybody.
And
it was the first day of rifle.
First day of rifle.
Yeah.
We were concerned with the public thing, and we're like,
we didn't want to get shot.
Yeah, didn't want to get shot, and we're like, oh, people are going to push deer us or whatever, and then none of that happened. Like, we didn't even see anybody out rifle hunting or whatever. So, I don't know. We ended up having a decent hunt, I suppose. But
it was fun. Do you remember?
Yeah, we had a little. The pattern worked.
The pattern worked.
It was a different buck. Actually, we know which buck this is off of trail camera stuff. I think now. Yeah. He's a 3-year-old 8-point.
He's good. Solid 8.
Yeah, solid 8. Like public land, definite shooter. Couldn't tell.
Private permission, definite shooter too.
Yeah, I mean that's in my mind. That's kind of how I had it. Sorry.
Right.
Not a trophy animal representative of the species. Yes, let's go out of state and shoot this deer.
Yeah.
So he comes up and does the exact same thing the buck the day before does, except he is about 100 yards further away from where we thought he was going to be.
Yep.
Back up a little bit. Cool things happened.
The cool things did happen.
Okay. This buck, we see him out in the ag field early, like as soon as it's daylight. And it goes like there's a deer, and then like 30 seconds later it's a touch lighter, and you can say, okay, it's a buck. And then you can say, I see antlers on it. And then
when you're like,
slowly,
I don't know if he's a shooter.
And then I'm like, I can see a maybe.
Then you're like, holy cow.
And you're like, oh, he's getting bigger. And then once we kind of figure out what he's got going on in his head, he walks over to this center pivot and makes a scrape on one of the water nozzles coming off of that thing. It was so cool.
He was just like enjoying it. It was like rubbing his head all over it.
It was neat, dude.
It was.
And then he proceeded to not come to the corner where we were sitting, which we thought he would, but cut straight across the middle of an open field.
Yes, which is dumb.
And we tried to call to. Well, actually, we started with rattling. Okay, and this is something that kind of we may have learned on this trip is that maybe rattling is reserved for the heart of the rut and pre-rut, because I don't know if we had. Well, the yearbuck that you almost had the chance at responded to tinkling horns, right? Like just little bitty guys. But besides that,
is tinkling the right word there? Is that
you tinkle them or you tickle them? Tinkling's what you do.
Tickle. You can tinker. You could tickle. You could tink them together, I guess.
Tink 69.
You could tink them together.
But anyways, tinkling horns. That buck we tried to rattle at 300 yards away, and I'm pretty sure we'll have to go back and look at footage, and you'll be able to see this on day 2 or 3 or whatever it is of this series whenever it launches. But I think pretty instantaneously did not like that and started scooting across pasture pretty good.
Yep.
And then
kind of did the tail flicker thing, and
it wasn't like a and then gone. He was just like, that's weird, and got on down the road. Well, then I grunted at him a couple times, and his demeanor changes quite a bit. He calms down, He's looking, he starts walking, grunt again, he looking, stops walking. I changed the tone of the grunt, and I think that made a big difference, you know. And it might be something for y'all to try. You know, if you got a deer that's listening to your grunt but not changing what he's doing, you know, maybe change the emphasis on the note. That's kind of what I did. I did a shorter, like, kind of thing.
More of a bark kind of thing.
And it was instantaneous again. It's not like he, like, looked and then turned 90. He just, like, turned 90 and then came when he heard that. It was almost like a, okay, yes, sir, kind of thing or something. And then Tyler and I are like, all right, it's about to happen. You know, like, we, like, changed modes. We're like, we went into kill mode, like, just getting ready for the shot. Hey, Tyler, take the camera, get your camera ready. This deer's going to come in on my side to shoot. We're not moving too much. And this deer is pretty much walking a beeline right to us, right? Is it beeline or V-line?
Beeline,
I think it's beeline.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what that's in reference to. I was thinking about that actually this morning. I wonder if it's like a World War II thing, like a B-52 bomber or something.
Yeah, I don't
know. Write in if you know what that is. So he's making a beeline right to us, okay? And then after he closed, 50 yards? Just speaks.
About.
And
he kind of stopped, and we don't know why. We weren't moving at all.
No, I mean, it was like, and we had been moving before that.
Yeah.
But we were still whenever he did this. And I don't know if it was a deal where he caught some scent, because he was past our scent stream at this point. But maybe there's a swirl or something, but he didn't act like a deer who had smelled something. He acted like a deer who saw something, and I know he didn't see us, unless he could just see the two blobs in the tree and didn't like it. That's all I can figure, man.
Yeah.
Or, no. I had another hypothesis.
Okay.
He may have seen a coyote.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Because whenever he did that, he actually wasn't looking right at us, I don't think.
Left.
He looked to our left and then got out of there.
Yeah.
So he may have been like, I hear grunt over there, and then he sees a coyote, and he's like, I ain't doing that.
He was definitely close to a downwind location, too. So.
Yeah. So,
but, I mean, one way or another, he pretty much took off. We were like, what in the world? Like, how many times can we just get so close?
Yeah.
And apparently we didn't know that there was more times we could get so close.
Apparently not. So, I don't really know what.
Before we move on from that hunt.
Okay.
He takes off. And so we're sitting there kind of bummed out. We're talking about stuff. I mean, quietly, you know. And all of a sudden, I look out where that buck kind of was. And I'm like, what is that? It's something moving small. Is that a coyote? Put my binos up. Roosters.
5 roosters. Rut-raging out in this ag field. And we're like spotting them, right? We're like figuring out where they're going, plotting them or whatever.
They're on the edge of this like little CRP thing.
And Tyler and I like devise a plan. He's like, all right, dude, you stay in the tree, keep your eyes on them. I'm going to go get the shotgun out of the truck, and we're going to go back and shoot them. Well, I lost them once they got into taller stuff. But we did go out, and Tyler successfully shot a pheasant, a rooster.
Yeah.
And we saw
jumped like 6 birds, and only one of them was a rooster, and I dusted them off pretty good.
Yeah. But he got him good, and we're going to eat a pheasant later.
That's right. He was a big one, too. I've shot some pheasants. That may have been the biggest pheasant I've ever shot.
And he wasn't real old, according to the Spurs, I wouldn't say. You know, but
the one was pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know much about him.
I don't either.
Anyways, he was a big bodied bird, I think.
It's the prettiest bird I've ever shot. You know,
he's nice, big old white ring around his neck.
They're just unreal.
After that, we packed up our stands and left, and I spotted a pheasant on public as we were driving by in a tree. And I was like, "Whoa, stop! Is that a pheasant in that tree? Quetzalcoatl bird? Is that what you said?"
Yeah.
Oh man, but we ended up putting a stalk on those birds, and dadgummit if he didn't jump up just a little bit too soon. There ended up being 3 birds in that bush. And it was 2 hens and a rooster. But I don't really know.
Pretty far out there.
Where else to go from there? But I think for the sake of time, maybe we should fast forward to like another close encounter.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. I think one thing to be said about that hunt is that we learned pretty quick that we felt at the time that like we were messing with one buck over there, like one little 3-year-old or something, and we were like,
"Preach, brother!"
What? We felt at the time that it was like, let's go somewhere where there's more shooter opportunities there. You know, like we're sitting here messing with. But in hindsight, after checking our trail camera on that property just a second ago, I think that what the issue is that it's just not. It's a lot of open country. It's not that much daytime movement.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
In the this kind of like post-rut area that
there's
we're in.
There's 4 shooters over there.
Yeah, and we had no clue that there was. I mean, I guess we had seen 2 of them, but we technically didn't know there was any more than one.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I think a lesson to be learned is that it wasn't eat up with daytime movement, but obviously there was a little bit of it, you know. I think it's just not quite like you're going to see all 4 of them in the same day like it is in the rut.
It's not rut-raging over there right now. It's just a little bit of raging.
So anyway,
so sometime later in the week, we decide to make the long trek out to a place that we'd hunted previously on our last rut trip.
Yeah.
It's open country spot. And if y'all remember from, I think it was day 3 or 2.
There was several days of stuff going on.
Particularly, like, there was a time when I stalked a buck that was bedded down.
Day 1.
Day 1. Oh.
It was, remember, midday we spooked them.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we ended up driving up further and you saw him.
And we have since named that buck Slippy.
Slippy.
Okay, so Tyler and
after Star Fox.
After
right?
Star Fox, that's right. If you're back from those N64 days, you know all about old Slippy. He was annoying.
This buck is nothing like Slippy.
Nothing like it, but also
weak and timid and annoying. No, this buck is.
He's more like on the Falco side of things.
Yeah.
But anyways, we decided to go back to this place because something we didn't like about that place we had been hunting is that you couldn't see quite as far. You know, a lot of trees and stuff. And we knew we could go over here and at least like put eyes on some deer and try to get aggressive, because once you get like that in your blood, like that whole like run and gun, go to him kind of thing, it's kind of hard to shake. Like you kind of miss it when you don't get it some, you know?
Yeah.
So we decided to go try to do some of that with the decoy and try to do all that action. Well, we go set up on this spot that we had been before. A really good like early morning spot trying to catch deer coming from bed to feed, or from feed to bed rather in this scenario. And same thing as always, dude. Like first light, we can like suddenly see a deer. Like there's already deer on us, right? And it goes from being like, it's a deer, it's a buck, it's a good buck. Oh, there's another buck. And these 2 bucks are doing things up here on this hill, and we need to go to them. Well, how it started is we were trying to communicate with them. I think we rattled, and I think we grunted. Couldn't get anything out of the rattle, and got some looks out of the grunts, but no responses. And after about 10 minutes, the deer just kind of end up over the hill away from us. And I believe our thought was, hey, let's be aggressive. Those deer are gone. Let's go and set up where they were, because that's going to be the pattern this morning. That there's going to be more deer come down in that same spot.
Yep.
Well, we crest the hill, and we don't even get to that because those 2 bucks are just right there on the other side of the hill.
Yeah, I thought that could happen, but I didn't think they would still be right there.
I didn't either.
You know what I mean?
You know, I thought that like maybe we might see them off in the distance or something, you know, because they were moving at a pretty decent clip whenever they left. And no, they were like right there. And as soon as we crested the hill, we figured out a lot more about them. The deer that we thought was the biggest one was actually not. He had more tines.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always mean everything, right? Like there was actually he might not have had more times. He had more time length. Same number of times.
And it could have just looked like more because he wasn't as heavy. You know?
Exactly.
I mean, it was just hard to tell in the darkness. You know?
Exactly. When we first saw those deer, it was still very, like daybreak at that point in time. So we climb up the hill, and what actually we stumbled upon was a buck locked up with a doe.
Well, and there was a bunch of does at first.
Yeah, there was. That's right. But that buck was still locked up with the doe further up the hill.
Yeah.
And then the original buck that we were thinking was the biggest one was out rut-raging all these does, running around, chasing them around and everything. Well, apparently none of those does were hot or receptive. He ends up coming back and kind of satellite bucking this buck and doe. and we really get to see some really cool deer interaction, like something I learned a lot from, where this buck is a 3-year-old. This other buck is 4+. We think he's 4, but, it's hard to tell when you don't have history with deer how old they really are, right? Like, if you don't get to see them at 1 and 2, like, trying to tell the difference in 4 and 5 and 6 sometimes gets a little blurry.
Yeah.
He's mature either way.
Yeah.
That buck has got a doe bedded, and he is not fighting with this 3-year-old, but keeping him at bay. The 3-year-old won't ever buck up for good reason.
He's just like letting him know he's boss,
Yeah, he's outweighed by like 30 or 40 pounds, I would bet.
Yeah.
And we watched this for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes trying to just figure out what to do. We're pretty good and concealed, and we see all this interaction happen, and then finally the younger buck goes and beds down.
Yeah, they're standing there, and they're in the same place for a long time, pretty much, in case he's about to bed down. That's what's about to happen.
Yeah, and it happened. That younger buck bedded down about 130 yards from us, and then the bigger buck kind of heads back up the hill to his doe and beds down about, 250. So at this moment, it's one of those situations where you got to be like, okay, I'm going to take the best play. I'm not going to get greedy. I'm not going to go for the biggest deer, but I'm going to go for the one that I think we can actually get, and it's that one that's closer. So Tyler and I, long story short, you can watch the film to see really all the crazy stuff that happens, but we end up stalking up within about 50 yards of that buck. And in all that, those bucks got up and down a couple times, and we had to chill out and wait, and they moved. It took an hour and a half, I think. And ended up getting 50 yards from this buck. I grabbed Tyler by the boot because we're crawling single file on our bellies.
And I have the decoy,
he's
so
got
I'm
the decoy
in front.
And I grabbed him by the boot, and I said, I see his antlers. And I could see this buck bedded, and he could not see us because of the grass, but I could see the tips of his antlers sticking up. And we're fixing to make a play. I mean, he's 50 yards away. We are setting up to do the decoy thing on this buck, and it's going to work. We're going to show him a doe, and he's going to come to it because
trying
he
to
wants
get over a terrace.
A terrace, yes.
And so I'm over the hump, but I'm not all the way down in the bottom trough of it or whatever. And you kind of pull up beside me, and we're, like you said, we're making a play. So just continue on.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out what we're fixing to do. One of the benefits of Tyler and I hunting together is that we can bounce ideas off of each other. And I think it's huge for us because I think that's what really helps us get into these positions where we're having at least close calls, right? Because it's just where we can put our minds together and come up with the best solution to a problem. We're coming up with the best solution to this problem of this buck bedded ahead of us. The best solution is going to be for us to get him up and me shoot him right there at 45 yards because he's going to stand up, walk to the edge of this tall grass that he's in, and I'm going to shoot him. Well, while we're figuring this out, we look to our left, and at 50 yards, the other buck had come down to, just impose his bigness on the little buck that was still bedded. And they both get up at that moment, and we're like, oh, no, what do we do? We're kind of pinned right here now with no shots on either of these deer.
And the scenario, real quick, is if you've ever seen a native grass field that most of the grass averages maybe 18 inches or so, that's what this looks like. There's some grass in there that's 4 foot, which he's bedded in or whatever, and then there's a lot of grass that's in that foot to 18 inches.
Yeah.
And so we, being not all the way down in the trough of this thing, we had some decent grass in front of us, but we're two big silhouettes sitting there on the plains,
And as soon as the younger buck gets up, he sees that we're over there. And we don't have a decoy up at all at this point because we were trying to talk, right? So he just sees two things. And he's curious enough and rutted up enough to come see what's going on, but he's going to go downwind. So
And we had flagged these deer both. The decoy saved us several times.
Yeah.
On the way in this stalk, we would be say KC would be looking through his binos for one buck, and the other buck would hop up to come impose his will or whatever, and all of a sudden I'm like, hey, right there on your left, 100 yards or whatever, he's coming again. And we would flash the decoy up while he's looking at us and hold it there for 15 minutes until he finally got
Finally,
cool and
whatever.
went back and bedded down.
Yeah, but it never did like the whole, I'm going to go over there and see what's going on about that, right? But, the decoy is super valuable in that whole scenario. And if we would have had the decoy up at that moment, it might have would have changed things quite a bit.
I almost guarantee
but
it would.
We have tall grass right in front of us that makes it kind of hard to get some shots. And then there's a line of tall grass that this buck, the smaller of the two, follows to get downwind. And he's
also coming a little bit closer.
A little bit closer. And he gets to, he's at that 40-yard line pretty much the whole time. And I draw, and I actually get a clean draw, I'm pretty sure, on him at least. I don't know what the other deer behind us is doing because I'm just going to try to shoot one of whatever one we've got opportunity at.
Right.
And I get a clean draw, and I'm drawing probably 3 seconds, which seems it's a very long time for that moment, and I cannot get a clear shot. And when I learned from the last time, you cannot shoot through a little bit of grass. It ain't going to work. Even if it's right on him, you can't shoot through it. And I could not get that clean shot, man. And that buck ends up walking down and getting downwind of us and blows and just right out of our sight. We can't see him anymore. And then all, focus goes to the other buck. What's he doing? Well, we turn around and he's being weird, but he's not completely spooked at that moment. Okay, I'm let down, but I've still got my bow right here. And I'm pretty sure what happened.
He had bounded off just a little
bit,
but he was looking.
And then his doe gets up, and that's when you're done.
I threw the horn on the decoy real quick. We had one horn with us
because he'd been trying to fight that other buck. We're like, okay, well, let's show him a buck, and maybe he'll come do this thing. And he would have if his doe hadn't got up. But that doe got up and wanted to get out of there. And he's going to do what she does, and that's what happened. And then at that moment, Tyler and I, our hearts sank so hard because
our necks were hurting so bad.
And pain in the neck, man. For real, when you're trying to look up over the grass and you're all hunched down, it's pretty rough. But we'd worked really hard to get to that moment, and then just for it to be a situation where there's too many bucks to get it done, it just really hurts. Things outside of your control affect you constantly in hunting, and I think I learned that a lot this week. But now I'm just going to tease this, okay? But we see that buck and doe keep going. Even while we're in dismay and I'm trying to talk Tyler out of crying and all of this. He actually did really good. I think we've had enough disappointment now that he's better.
Yeah, I'm just used to it.
But
forgotten what success feels like.
We were watching this buck and doe run off, and they bound off to about 400 yards and then stall. And I'm thinking,
this is where the doe not seeing us helped us tremendously. I think.
Yeah, for sure. She didn't know what happened. She just knew she was uncomfortable. Well, she got to a place where she was comfortable. They stalled out, and we thought they were kind of looking at that other buck being weird down below us or something. But we're sitting here watching them, and I tell Tyler, "It's hey, those deer aren't out of our lives yet, so let's just sit here and watch them." I didn't have a lot of confidence in it, but there's no reason to leave if they're still right over there. They might come back or something. I think I said that, which is a dumb idea. I don't think they would ever come back. But we're watching the deer. The buck, looking around hardcore, and then kind of turns around and lays down.
Yep.
Laid down, rebedded in sight. How lucky are we? And then, here's where the teasing part comes in. I decided to stalk this buck.
Ooh.
And it got real cool.
Dude, it got so cool.
But you'll have to watch the video.
Yeah.
To see how cool it got.
Yeah, it got real cool.
I got real close.
Yep. So, is there anything from either the real cool moment that you've teased or the one that we just talked about that you take away as being a very big lesson learned, something that you will do in the future that you won't do?
I think that something I've just learned, and you can't control it, but I think what it's going to help you to do is to manage expectations, is to understand that in hunting there are things outside of your control that you can't do anything about that will affect your situation and will affect the outcome. Mm-hmm. And I think that It's not going to help me kill more deer, but it's going to help me feel better about not getting it done.
Yeah.
And that's not an excuse, because there are still plenty of things that I'm sure I could have done to make it better, crawled a little further, not had to cough. I lost my rangefinder along the trip, and I had to crawl back.
I lost your rangefinder.
Yeah, can't find yours. But and just in that scenario, I had to crawl back 60 yards to go get the rangefinder and then come back. Those moments, that little bit of time saved could have killed me that deer. I don't know that. But I think the biggest thing through both of these situations is that things are going to happen that change what you're doing, and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And you just have to live with it and roll with the punches. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, I know it's kind of like a cop-out answer almost, but I think for me, keeping a positive attitude is huge when it comes to this stuff, especially when you're on a hunting trip as opposed to going on a hunt. If you're going hunting that evening, something bad happens, you can go home to your wife or go home to your bros or whatever you got and just hang out and feel better about things. But when you're on a trip like this and you've been grinding it out for 3 days and working your butt off, and then it goes south real bad on a hunt, and you still got 2 more days to hunt, and you got to keep your morale high.
Yeah.
And if you just have a satisfied mind about things, sometimes it really helps you to be able to get up and go on the next hunt.
Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot from you in that regard this year, and like I said, you were saying that I've gotten better at it. It's just I'm trying to learn how to do that better.
So you've gotten better at that. You and I, just everyone has things that they're not great at, right? I'm not great at being timely. I'm not terrible about forgetting, I'm being 2 hours late to stuff, but I feel like 5 or 10 minutes in the morning.
Okay, so I feel like this is part of this is something that happens because of your positive attitude.
My being late?
Yes.
Okay.
You want me to explain?
Yeah, I would like to hear that, because I don't understand how they correlate.
So I think that you, and this, I don't mean for this to sound like a negative thing, because I love your positivity, and I think that it gave us a chance at that buck yesterday again,
Yeah.
But you have all these, you're oh, I can get there still.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And when really it's let's see, there's 7 minutes until you're supposed to meet so-and-so, and it's a 15-minute drive, and you still think that you can do something before you go. You know what I'm saying? And you're I got this. You're I can do this. You know what I mean? and so I kind of wonder if you have a hard time admitting defeat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
so it's sometimes you're you won't even be hey, I'm going to be late until you already are late. You know? You're I can't. I can do this. I'm 15 minutes away, and there's 1 minute until time or whatever. I don't know. I feel like that may be kind of part of the deal.
I'm a little bit.
What's
it called? Not over ambitious, but too positive about what I think I can get done. What's the word?
Overly optimistic.
Overly optimistic. That's the right. That's what I'm looking for.
It's a good thing though, because like I said yesterday, we had another chance at that buck because of that optimism, whereas this morning I'm still in the learning process of being more optimistic, and we could have had another chance at something that we're going to talk about here in a second if I had been more optimistic. So that's definitely a downfall of mine.
Let's dive into that. And by the way, whenever I lose optimism, Tyler gets real worried, and I need to do a better job. So sometimes you set yourself up on this, I'm not going to say I'm on a pedestal, but I bring some optimism to the group,
sure.
Right? And when I don't have it, you're oh crap, Casey doesn't feel good about this.
It must be bad.
And
we
honestly,
ain't killing nothing.
This morning was a little bit like that. I didn't feel great about it.
I could tell.
But it just as any hunt, once you get out there and you kind of get the stands hung or whatever, you're you know what? Yeah, let's do this thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's foggy.
I feel like I kind of brought it a little bit this morning.
You did. You brought it, dude.
For me, at least.
You brought it.
I was like, dude, this is just like the day we killed Nameless.
It was.
This is the same weather conditions.
Muggy, and then got colder as the morning progressed.
Same wind, overcast.
It was good.
Yeah.
But it was foggy, which wasn't like Nameless. Nameless, it was pretty clear, overcast.
But very overcast.
The fog got worse and worse this morning. But at daylight, Tyler says, I think I can see a buck. And then you lost it. 5 minutes later, I see a buck. and I look at it in the binos, and I'm like, yeah, it's definitely a buck. So we're like kind of last day in it, right? So it's time to be aggressive, and we've learned that we can't really rattle and get deer to respond. So I've got that Primos buck roar, which
thing is bad to the bone.
Yeah, in no way are we endorsed by them, but the Primos buck roar like makes a noise they like.
I'm pretty sure I've just laughed at the fact that there's a called a buck roar before.
Hey, dude, marketing is just that.
Yeah,
you know?
and now I kind of feel bad about it because that call is a good call. Man.
Yeah, I mean it worked a lot this week.
It gets loud. It sounds good,
and you can do soft tones with it too.
Exactly.
But anyways, I give this deer a good bleh, and he looks. And then he's starting to move, and then the fog gets thicker, and he disappears. We're like, what? I don't know what he's doing. And then we kind of like...
We were actually, I think we were about to rattle. We were about to rattle. Remember? Because
yes.
we were like, we thought...
Well, we almost kind of forgot about him for about 10 minutes, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden, I literally have the horns in my hand fixing to clack them together. And Tyler says, hold on.
I said it twice because a lot of times I can't tell. I know that like when I'm looking away, you might not be able to hear me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's a buck. And then I turn around, I'm like, there's a buck. Like, listen. And so you probably heard me the first time. But anyway, I was like trying to keep you from banging the horns together, And I could tell he was coming at us. And so I pull the binos up, and it's pretty early. It's very early still. But, not like shooting light early. It's just like still getting a lot lighter by the minute.
It's such a thick fog cloud day that it was probably 7 o'clock, right? And it's still kind of hard to see.
Yeah. I think by the time everything was kind of like we had wound down, I looked at my clock and it was already 8.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so he's coming, and I can't tell anything about him. All I can tell is that the first time I saw him, I was trying to get you to kind of confirm, and I never really got it out of you because you probably couldn't see him just about as good as I couldn't see him. But I was like, man, he looks like a big-bodied deer.
Yeah.
And so he ends up kind of coming this way, and I got the binos. And so, it's weird because, by the time he gets out of, the fog, he's close enough that we can see him pretty good. He's close. You know, he's 100 and something yards, probably low 100 yards. And so he's coming at the most open area, the most vulnerable as far as vision goes, deer vision goes, the most vulnerable we are, that direction.
Yeah, no cover that way.
And so so I feel like I can't move hardly, and and I did move a little bit because I'm having to get my bow and stuff. You go get your bow, and so I'm grabbing my bow. And
another good thing about hunting as a pair, I can bino, or actually at that moment, because it was so foggy, my camera was working better than binos.
And better than my binos, too.
And so, I'm looking at him through the viewfinder on the camera, and I know when the deer's head's down, I can tell Tyler to move. And all this time, we're not, we don't know if this is a shooter or not. This happens a lot to us on this trip, especially, it's daybreak and there's deer, right? So, you're as it's getting lighter, you're determining whether you're going to shoot this deer or not. And this deer goes from being a buck to being a really big buck.
Yeah. And he's coming at us, and he's close, and he's closing, and he had heard our grunt is obvious,
Yeah.
He's coming straight at us. And on a beeline, which I just looked up, and it happens to be a straight line between two places, just so you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's coming on a beeline at us, and he KC's kind of stopping me whenever he's looking up, so telling me not to move, and I'm not moving, so I'm just kind of wigged out. And here's the thing: is we're supposed to have a wind that is easterly, and while he's coming, the wind dies, gets really still, and then when he gets within about 40. The wind turns out of the west, and I'm like, what in the world is going on here? And I don't know if that's a swirling, here we are, light and variable kind of thing, or what. But there was a decent wind hitting me from the west, and he ends up stopping at 30 yards, and just he's just nose in the air, just smelling, because the wind is doing weird things. And so he's looking and smelling, and he stops, and for several minutes he's there, and then the wind just picks back up finally. just a touch. It wasn't a whole lot, but out of that easterly direction. And so I felt decent about it. But he's still kind of working to our downwind side, I feel like. And unfortunately, there was some dead timber and stuff that I think drove him that direction. Or he would have just come straight to us, and there's a trail at like 2 yards, from our tree. And I'm kind of preparing for that situation because I can't see the other trail that he came down, which I looked at after we got down, and it's a great trail for him to come down for sure. But he's coming, and I forgot to mention that KC had told me he's a half rack, and you were starting to like, I think he's a half rack, and I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, because he's a giant, and I don't know how he generated enough force to break off.
Yeah,
but I mean, he's like a legit half rack. Like, I don't even know if there's a brow tine on one side.
Yeah, he's broke very low.
Yeah,
and so he ends up getting close, and I can tell he's a half rack. And man, he's a big deer, and so he's getting behind these trees, and if I'm going to get a shot at him as a right-hander, I've got to get swiveled around and squared up to him a little more. And as he starts to come down this limb and get close to these tree trunks that are going to allow me to swivel, I notice another buck coming behind him.
Oh, my goodness. And 2 bucks again?
2 bucks again. And he's probably 75, 80 yards back. And this buck, they're in tall enough grass that this front buck cannot see him. But this other buck in the back is coming way faster than this first buck. And so I'm like, Casey, there's a buck in the back too. There's a buck in the back too. He's like, okay. And so I was like, what is he? And he gets the camera on him, I guess, or something. And he's like, same deer, but both sides, full rack or whatever. And I was like, oh, crap. So, like, now, the greedy American in Tyler Jones wants to come out and shoot that buck, And so I start thinking, and I'm like, this guy's moving way faster than the other buck. And here's my hope, is before the first buck gets downwind, is that this buck catches up with him enough that he's making enough noise or is in the vision of the first buck, and that they see each other, and it stops the first buck from getting in my wind and also distracts him enough that I can move around, and who knows which buck I shoot, but at least I'm moved around without being seen, and I have a chance at shooting both of them maybe, And like, it was one of those things, it was just like, it was happening very fast, and both bucks are closing in, one on our stand location and the other on like our wind at like 7 yards. And he's getting behind all these trees that I have a chance to turn, but I never turn because I'm kind of almost, it's not like just a wing and a prayer thing, but it kind of is, and hoping that deer catches his attention before he gets to our wind. And he doesn't quite get there. He gets to like 40 yards, and they still can't see each other, and the wind is decent enough that I guess he couldn't hear him either. And this buck ends up at like 7 yards downwind of us. And this is a weird thing to me about whitetail deer. I felt like he was close enough that our wind could easily drift over him, especially on a morning hunt. But with the way that the pressure was today and the moisture in the air and everything, I could see our scent falling for sure.
Yeah, something we didn't do is ever let go any milkweed there to see what was happening there. We just kind of assumed that we had enough. Like, the wind was pretty much a straight direction for the most part, minus that one time when he was coming in. So we just kind of figured, like, our scent stream's over there, we're good. Yeah. But it definitely could have been, a situation where it was just falling out right there.
Right. And then you also think about this, I'm using, it doesn't matter what stick you're using really, if you've got a rope or a strap or whatever, it's going to have some scent in it, right?
Yeah.
So at 3 feet, there's scent, so that's kind of an issue too if you have that run and gun set kind of thing going. So either way, he smelled us. But what baffles me about the whitetail deer is that when I've been smelled before, they will look up at you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you could see him at that moment, but when he smelled us, he looked right up at us.
Yeah.
I mean, dead straight at me. And I'm like, how does he know that that's where that scent is coming from? You know what I mean?
We've talked about this before, and I don't know if it's because like they can smell, their nose is crazy different than ours, right? Like, can they smell that treetop and know that it smells different than the tree bottom or something? I don't know.
Probably, yeah.
And if they're like, okay, if I smell that there, that means this other scent's probably come from there too.
Kind of connect the dots.
kind of connect the dots.
Yeah.
It's a really weird thing, but I know what you're talking about, man.
Yeah. And so at that moment, I pretty much knew what was going on. I knew I keep really good tabs on my wind, I feel like, and I understand that. I understand that there is a very, there's a threshold that they're going to get to eventually that they're going to lock up, and I know when they're getting pretty close to that usually. And so I knew he was getting close, and so I guess just it was almost instinctual. I didn't really like premeditate this, but when he bolted, he's in tall grass, so he has to kind of jump. He can't just run, And so as soon as he bolted, I just like flipped my hips real quick so that I could get a shot when he stopped out there. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what happened. Casey and I talked about it a little bit, and we couldn't
saw
decide.
two different things.
We kind of saw two different things, but I do know that what I saw was that he pretty much disappeared out of my sight.
Yeah.
He
he must have been behind just a specific limb or something.
Well, there was a pretty good-sized tree right there that he was kind of heading to, that was leaning his way. And I think he just got behind kind of the top portion of that tree, and I couldn't see him. And I thought, because the reason I flipped my hips and got ready to draw, because I thought if he stops out there at 30 yards, I'm going to smoke him, or whatever. Yeah. And KC thinks that he did stop out there at 25, 30 yards.
He blew a second time.
I know he stopped. I just don't know. I thought it was further.
I turned around and looked and saw him jumping a log that I know was at 35-ish yards.
And either way, I couldn't see him. So I didn't have a shot.
Yeah.
But that was my thought process, was to get the shot. Well, when I jumped, of course, the other buck, like he was distracted by the one buck, getting out of there, but he also could see me at like 40 yards, And so he saw me, and he's looking up. And at that point, it took just a second for the other buck to have blown, and then for the first buck to blow and take off again. And I pretty much just gave up at that point, and I should have been really still. But I had so much just like adrenaline going at the time. Like staying still was almost not in me. It wasn't in me because I didn't do it. But if I'd have stayed still, maybe the other buck, maybe there was a chance something would happen. Who knows? But probably not, because they were both, they're both big bucks, like 4.5s, and they were probably both going to ease out of there. You know what I mean? So,
well, it was one of those deals where we talked about it later. If we'd have had a decoy on the ground right there, we would have killed maybe both of those deer. And you just don't know to do that. You don't know to use that tactic in that scenario, in that situation, in that day.
There's so many things that we looked back and said, if we'd have done this, that would have happened.
You talked about this. Like, it's like there's three options here, and if you choose one of the three options, you'll have success. Well, you have 20 scenarios of that each morning or each evening you hunt.
Yeah.
So it's what? So that's like 3 squared times 20 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So 9 times 20 is, whatever that comes out to.
180.
180. Like 1 in 180 times will you get it right, and it's probably greater than that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So like all these little things, it doesn't sound like much, like 1 out of 3 times, I can get that, but there you have all these different options that you have to fill in as well, and it can almost seem insurmountable.
It does.
To get it done, especially whenever my wife says I say that wrong, especially, there's no X in it, especially, see, that sounds so like
proper, prim and proper.
Yeah, and like almost just a little soft, like especially, like that's.
I mean, I say it, but it just kind of, if you do your asses like this, it might be a little bit more prim.
That's right. I'm just not a prim and proper kind of guy.
Yeah, you're not.
Anyways.
Hey, throw the X in there all you want. As long as she doesn't listen, I'm cool with it.
All right. Yeah, it's fine. She ain't going to.
I do notice it, though, just so you know.
All right, good. Yeah. Anyways, I do notice that you scared deer off when we could have shot them, but it's fine. It's a good morning, man.
Hey, okay.
What?
You just like got to tease and skip over when you scared some deer off.
When I scared deer off?
When you teased the one you teased about.
What? The teased about?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
The one you teased about.
I don't know what that means. Oh. Dude,
You don't remember teasing?
No, I did not scare that deer off. Come on. No. Anyways, good morning, good hunt. We are now headed back to Tejas to resume our normal everyday lives, which aren't that normal. We do a lot of cool stuff. Got to go back and still try to concentrate on hunting at home, knowing that there's a tag burning a hole in both of our pockets in an out-of-state location with some really big deer.
Yeah. It's, man, I don't know. We kind of talked about this a little bit, or I may have said something about this. I feel like I did a day or two ago, but I don't know. It's tough. It's tough in Texas, man. Like, we went and found a permission property, 2 permission properties.
Texas?
And in Kansas.
Okay.
And did it pretty easily. I spent 2 years trying to do that when I moved back. When I moved from Dallas back to the East Texas area, and couldn't get one single permission. Granted, I was trying for some nice properties, but these are. I mean, the ones we're hunting in Kansas are good too.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we get these permissions, we go sit, and we see a 3+ year old buck every time, right? We go to public in Kansas, which we're starting to figure out that we need to get some more permissions, maybe, because a lot of people talk up the public thing in Kansas, and there are probably some good places, but I know where we've been hunting, man, the gas bill just alone to try to get from one decent place to another decent place that's not just like, hey, here's a bunch of 12-foot grass that maybe a pheasant's in and maybe a couple quail. Like, it's just kind of there's like, I don't want to diss it by any means.
No, I'm glad it's there.
It's something that, like, I'm glad we've tried it and I'm glad we've done it, but having several permissions to kind of phase out a few, like,
or see if you can just centralize some.
Yeah,
right?
that's more than anything.
A couple public parcels, a couple permission parcels that are all pretty close together. Then you don't have to run all around, and you can hunt a bunch of different winds on different places.
Not
and
as
not
tired.
Burn anything out.
You're making better decisions because you're not tired.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's kind of like what we're trying to do. And I kind of forgot where I'm going. Oh, so Texas. I spent some time on some public in Texas, and it's just not like hunting in a lot of other places. In eastern Texas, and the thing is, like, I'm still having to get up. I'm getting up earlier, and we just talked about running around a lot up here. I'm getting up earlier in Texas to go to most of the time to go to my hunting places on public in Texas.
Yeah,
and I hunted 11 hours the other day on public and saw 3 deer, and I was hunting in good spots. I mean, like, beat in trails on good winds, and that's just kind of how it goes. And I know that our Texas listeners out there that have spent some time on public understand it.
Dude, they're fist raised high right now.
That's
as
right.
They're listening.
and I'm not trying to get a pity party going here or nothing, but I just am saying that coming off of this trip where literally almost every single hunt, and I'm not talking about day, I'm talking about there's 2 hunts in a day, we had an opportunity at what we call a shooter buck, which is basically 3 or older.
Well, man, when the habitat's good, that's the difference, and the deer up here, they get to eat corn and stuff all the time. They've got different types of trees and habitat and crap all along every border or whatever.
Right.
There's just good places for a lot of deer to hide. And then if you set up where you can see a ways, which we like to do up there,
that's
because you can
thing.
Call to them, then, you're going to see some deer.
I mean, if I'd have sat 11 hours where I could see for 500 yards in East Texas, I probably would have seen a shooter, I guess. But it just makes it difficult when you're sitting there looking, and you got about 60 yards in 3 different directions, and then the other 3 directions are like 40 yards. You know, if you're sitting in some thick stuff, it makes it a long hunt sometimes.
Yeah.
And so like that coupled with getting up early and still spending a lot of gas money to go, you know, to these places makes it. I just hope that I know that I will when I get home and get a day or two off. But I hope that I just keep that drive going to go get it done, because I do have a buck that I really would like to shoot located.
I would like for you to shoot him too. So let's do our best to take what we experienced this week, learn from it, not get distracted by all these Canada geese flying around everywhere right
everywhere.
now. Look at all of those.
Waffling down.
Are those Canadians or Canadas? I don't know.
Well, it depends on if you're talking to Luke Leahy or not.
That's right. That's what matters. Anyways, let's take what we learned, apply it, use it, and get some things done, man, because we are done with November.
We are.
It's sad. So every year we sit down and like write out our plan, like optimal, like when we're going to kill stuff where, and it has pretty much not happened since September.
Yeah.
Like I killed an elk, and that's the last like
plan that was made that happened.
We haven't killed a deer since what, October 6th?
It was early October.
Yeah.
And it was a jackrabbit sized deer.
No, she jumped like a jackrabbit.
She did.
That was cool, but you know, like I can't believe like. Not to get down, because I'm still up, especially after our truck cam pull we just had.
Yeah.
But, dude, the month of deer hunting is over.
I know. That's the saddest part. It's like, even in October, you're like, oh, can't wait. It's coming. It's coming, you know. And then, of course, all the way from, like, July on, you're like that, too.
Yeah, sure.
But
it's the first, like, as soon as, like, the temperature actually starts to kind of go down the bell curve, you're like, oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And then now... We talked about this earlier. Like, there is a day in November, which I feel like is probably the 18th, where you're like, oh, it's actually not as good as it was yesterday. And so on and so forth until, like, it's to the point where you're like, man, these antlers might fall off after I shoot this deer, you know? Like, and don't get me wrong, big deer are killed in December all the time. Tyler's kids killed some big deer in December. I have in the past, like, it's not that deer hunting is over, but man, the traditional rut dates are over. There, a lot of places aren't going to be like the Midwest. You're going to still see a lot of rutting activity, especially back home for us.
Yeah.
So it's something to look forward to, but it's always going to be spotty. You never know when you're going to be there on the right day, whenever it's going to be going down. So it's kind of an encouragement and uplifting to know that time spent in the stand can pay off still.
Yeah.
You know, and even if you're not in that rutting activity, if you got a good food source, or just an okay food source, or you sprinkle some chum corn on the ground, you know, like you can get it done. That's what we have to tell ourselves.
Well said, sir.
Ooh.
You know, one thing, this is just a side note. I know this is a long podcast, but this is kind of a side note, but I also like part of what you just said. I wish that a long time ago, somebody smart had been like, hey, let's make a WMA out of someplace in South Texas that's like 20,000 acres.
Yeah.
And because there's a, you know, like mid-December rut there. Like, how cool would that be, man?
That'd be nice.
I know, but now it's just bought by millionaires and you can't get any access down there.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of...
Oh, you can. It's just pay to play, brother.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't get any access down there,
Nope.
so... But I don't know. That would be cool to be able to hunt the rut again in December, you know?
Yeah.
I hadn't done that in a long time.
Maybe we just need to go
there.
Alabama.
That might be what we need to do.
Yep.
But until I can punch this tag up here, I probably won't go to Alabama.
I'm probably not going to Bama. No,
Yeah.
not if that's the case. I would much rather go to the Midwest. And we've got good opportunities up here, too, you know, in later seasons. A good friend of ours, Steven Spurlock, he's been on the podcast before, makes some really sweet films about deer hunting and turkey hunting and elk hunting, all kinds of stuff. He says this is his favorite time of year.
Yeah.
Once the deer get in post-rut and they're more patternable.
Yeah.
He says it's time to slay giants. So
it's mine too.
Slay some giants, dude.
I've shot a lot of them in December, man. It's a good month, but you got to find some food.
That's the month I was born in.
I mean, that makes it a great month. Yeah, that's for sure. So anyway, don't forget here at the end of this thing, a couple plugs. Make sure the Instagram, has anybody claimed one yet?
Oh, no, they haven't. Oh, my
Still,
goodness.
These people are crazy.
Oh, my goodness.
So we still have 4 OnX premium memberships, 1 year premium memberships to give away. And if nobody claims them by next Thursday, we're going to pick 4 more new winners.
Yeah, that's
or
right.
whoever, however many haven't
If you
claimed.
win twice, then you're really lucky.
Yeah.
So you better claim that sucker.
Yeah. So
Also, don't forget, we really love iTunes reviews. If you have listened to this podcast for an hour and 30 minutes, then we know that you love us.
that's right.
So show us some more love and leave us an iTunes review because it really helps us out a ton.
Yeah, and you guys I said we weren't doing any more giveaways for iTunes reviews the rest of the year, and we're not. But in the future, any review that has been posted is going to be up for a pretty sweet
Eligible
deal.
for the sweet
Pretty
deal.
sweet deal.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that'll be obviously next year, but next year is pretty close.
Oh, real close.
Yeah. How you feeling about your Texas hunting in the next week or so?
Next week or so.
Are you going to do any of it?
Yeah, I'm going to try to.
Yeah.
If you said next month or so, I'd say, yeah, I feel real good. Next week or so, I got to get back and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Because things have changed quite a bit since we left. One thing about Texas is that we got that trickle rut thing, and there's going to be a good bit of doe cycling back in the upcoming week and a half. So we're liable to see a good little peak in rut activity again soon. So I feel pretty good about it, to tell you the truth of the matter.
Got you a new spot, too, it looks like.
Ooh, how about that? So I guess we can kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit. Y'all keep me and my wife in your prayers, but I think we are about to purchase a property. I'm going to have my very own, not large,
Big buck
but
paradise.
a really well-placed property.
Yeah.
That I ran a trail camera on for about 3 days and had about 5 or 6 bucks on it. So, and a bunch of pigs, which I got to go get taken care of because I hate them. But yeah, got some a new hunting property.
1 acre right in the middle of the Hagman.
That's right in the middle of Hagman. No, it's gonna be good. I'm gonna do it. I told Tyler jokingly I'm on the 50-year management plan over there, so I ain't just gonna go over and shoot a buck. Like this year, if I see a 4-year-old over there in the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, I might shoot him if he looks like a deer that's not going to grow anything crazy. But it's a place that I can micromanage a little bit and maybe see some really older deer. So,
Are you looking to get them to 50?
I'd like to.
Yeah.
Just because the notoriety that would come with having a 50-year-old whitetail on your place. But besides that, no, I don't think so. I think it's just going to be. I would love to shoot some 5-year-olds, man.
Yeah.
That's just that's the number, dude.
We saw a 50-year-old on this trip.
We might have. Goodness gracious.
It was the oldest.
We're going to talk about that another time. Maybe we can. We should do some hunting story stuff. I know we do big buck breakdowns, but just a good old hunting story podcast might be cool.
That would be cool.
Might have to do that in January or something.
Yeah, for sure.
But
so the Texas thing is exciting. We've got some potential there, hopefully, in the next few weeks.
And we hope to be back up here
and
later in the season.
Speaking, you mentioned the prayers thing. I had kind of said this in a different way this morning, but my dad says it all the time. You're going to kill as many big bucks as God wants you to kill.
That's true, man.
So whatever's going on with this season, and we're having so many close calls, there's a reason for it.
He said, "You knotheads, just learn some stuff.
That's
Stop
right.
worrying about it."
Yeah, y'all need to learn before you act like y'all can kill everything. I don't know, but there's a reason for sure, and those close calls, man. I'm sitting there thinking about it, and the more I sat there and looked at that 7-yard spot, I definitely struggled with it. But I also was super thankful sitting there that we got to experience that.
It's
this
fun,
morning.
man. How often do you get to call in 2 mature bucks at the same time?
Yeah, pretty neat.
Yeah.
So, anyway, is there anything else we need to house cleaning stuff?
That's all I got, brother.
All right, man. Well, let's get out of here. Hope you guys are having a great week, and the weekend is coming, man. So, y'all stay chill, and remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
Hey guys, turkey season is in full swing right now, and if you are planning on getting after it, make sure to pick up some meat eater Phelps turkey calls to stuff into the old turkey vest or into your fanny pack right now. I carry a few different things. I like to use mouth calls. and I like to use pot calls. Mouth calls or diaphragms, I like them because it gives you hand-free calling, meaning when you're working a bird up close, you can have your gun on your knee, finger on the trigger, ready to roll, and still be making turkey sounds. I like pot calls because I just like pot calls. I enjoy calling with a pot call. Whatever direction you go, including a box call, which I don't personally use too much, but they're fun and great, and I started out with them. Yanni, on the other hand, one of my main turkey hunting buddies, he loves box calls. And what's funny is I'll now and then look to him and give him the look that means get out your box call and find us a turkey. So it's not that I don't like him. I just have Yanni use his. Then I don't have to carry it. Go to Phelps Game Calls. Get calls that are made in the USA and get calls that'll get them close. Find yours at phelpsgamecalls.com today.